And welcome back to another episode of the Swandingo Files. My guest today is Marilyn Richards. She is also a fellow veteran, Navy and Air Force, but we won't hold that against her today.
It's the chair
And
force. Get it right.
I'm sorry, the Air Force. Sorry, I'm Army, so you know you gotta give a little slack. But I do appreciate everybody that served always. We gotta have our banter back and forth though. But
Right.
nobody on the outside world can come at us. So today we're just gonna talk about why you joined, some of your achievements, or what you did in the military, your transition out, and how you are crushing it today. So if you want to go into why you joined the military to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate being able to share a little bit about my story and hopefully help others, like us who are struggling to transition. Um, well, my dad is retired from the Air Force. He is a Vietnam vet. He is a combat veteran. He is one of my biggest reasons why I decided to join the military because it became an option that was often spoken of when I was growing up. It's something to be proud of. We have a military family. So there's a lot of people in my family that served. I served with my twin sister, and my dad was the first to leave the family to do that, and we've just been keeping that tradition going because my cousins served. We looking down at our lineage, we have some distant relatives in our genealogy that served in the Civil War and World War II as well. So that's one of
Wow.
the biggest influences why I wanted to join.
That's a lot of family members so that have been in and served. So you come I understand. So that makes it the patriotism is strong in your family, and that's nice to hear.
Absolutely. My dad is a huge patriot, and as a matter of fact, he talked my cousin Harry into joining because he used to live in California with us when we were
Mm.
little, and then he ended up joining the Air Force. Served 10 years, and then of course my sister and I we ended up doing that after graduating high school. So
Okay.
yeah.
So what did you do in the Air Force?
I first started out in command and control operations. So I was a command post controller. I did not get qualified. I struggled with qualifying and multitasking because that job does take a lot of multitasking. Unfortunately, I couldn't hack it because as if I look back now, I see some symptoms of PTSD that I didn't know it was. And because I'd just gotten out of the Navy and then 9/11 happened. So I was
Mm.
transitioning from one branch to another, and it was a very, very hard adjustment period, very hard transition for me, especially because the Navy mentality is a lot more um, it's a lot more abrasive, very crude and abrasive type of quality of life, and the Air Force is completely opposite of that.
So you joined the Navy first, or
I joined the Navy first,
okay?
and
So
then
I was a little confused there. Sorry.
no, that's fine. It does get confusing when you look at dual service, and I'm like, which is which and when and where. So yes, Navy first, and then Air Force second.
Then what did you do in the Navy first?
I was a launch and recovery technician on an aircraft carrier, the USS Carl Vinson. I was an ABE-2, and I was in catapults. So I launched aircraft off the flight deck, is what I used
Wow.
to do. So yeah.
So the real pilots, not the ground pilots, the actual floating pilots. Got it. So I hear
Right.
there's a lot. I hear there's a lot of banter back and forth between Air Force and Navy pilots, and I don't know really, but I know from what I've heard. I've never done it, of course, because I was a scout in the Army, so I don't fly. I stay on the ground.
Right,
Um,
right.
but I've heard a lot of Navy pilots say that it's a lot harder to land on a aircraft carrier than it is on the ground. And I'm sure it's true. So
Oh yes. Oh yes, it is pretty difficult. You're dealing with a very moving um, you know, landing area. It's very and some of the equipment that we used to it's called a MOVLIS. It's a manual operating visual landing aid system that we use on the carriers. there's 3 of them. So if one goes down, we manually have to stand the other one up. And so that way the pilot has the ability to take a look at that source light. They can focus on the ball and be able to have it guide them into landing. It does take a lot of practice, and some of those, especially like you could tell when you're on deck and you're looking at the planes coming in on the ball, and some of the newest fresh recruits who are trying to get their hours and learning, they are like coming in like this and like making hard landings. It's could be a little iffy at times, but the ones that really love to fly, you could tell they are great at what they do. They land very well, and they get their hours in. I loved it. I loved being on the flight deck. I loved being around the air crew. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, you're just kind of reaffirming me, just keeping my feet on the ground a little bit more, I think. So that's yeah. I don't want to do that. No, thank you.
You're a grunt, so
Yeah, yeah.
you sleep in
So
foxholes, right?
foxholes, if we even want to make a foxhole, that is. I mean, it varied. So how many years altogether did you do between the two?
I did 4 years in the Navy and then 2 years and 9 months in the Air Force. I got out a little bit earlier than expected, during a force shaping phase in 2004. So the Air Force was going through a revamping of like, okay, this career field is overmanned. Let's kind of shave some personnel off. Let's move them over here. They got rid of a couple of career fields and whatnot. Mine was a special circumstance, and so I ended up getting out in in a categorized in a different manner of like, okay, well, you're not like a pipeline student, you're not like first time enlisted. I was considered like a second term airman is what they call it. So I happened to get out 1 year earlier than expected, which I was probably okay with because I didn't transition very well in the Air Force, and I was actually having a really hard time acclimating to the environment, to this new environment, to this new culture, because the Navy is very there's traditions there's traditions, there's this brotherhood that I loved so much about it that I missed, and you don't really find that very much in the Air Force. It's there, but it's not as strong, if that makes sense.
No, it does, and that's one thing and I think this is where the military is failing, big time. They've taken the community, and some people are bothered by it, but they get acclimated eventually. But the community barracks, the community showers, that you live, you sleep, you play, and you fight together. And I know the Navy can only do so much because it's on a floating palace. I've never
Right.
actually been on a ship before, and I know the submarines are even more different, more compact. But for the most part, like even in the Army, every soldier for the most part gets their own room. Well, you build
Right.
camaraderie when you're right there next to everybody. I mean, and that's where the support comes from. And when you do start going through things, you can kind of tell when soldiers are going through things, and airmen and seamen and Marines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The old traditional community lifestyle is gone. And I think that's why there's an increase in suicide just inside the military alone, because you're sitting in your own room at night and you're not checking on each other anymore. You're sitting there playing video games. You
Right.
know,
Kind of like in
you're
your own world.
exactly. And I think that's where the military needs to go back to stop with these college dorm room lifestyle, because we're not in college. We're expected to do 10 times more than what college students are expected to do. And
I agree.
so they need to get away from that college mentality, because it's not a college. Even in the Air Force, you're there to fight wars and win wars.
Yeah, it's not, but um so I lived in a dormitory when I was
Hmm.
at the base. It was called a 1+1. So you have like a adjoining,
Hmm.
you have like your room next door, and then you share a common area, which is like the kitchenette and to the bathroom. So there is that separation there. I didn't really, get close enough to anyone that I lived with because, you're kind of like, in you're right. It's mirrored very closely to college life where you're around a lot of your peers, but you're not really close. It's really hard to
Hmm.
explain. And you're right, because the Navy is much like the Army and the Marines. You are like you sleep, eat, and shit together. Seriously, you
Hmm.
know, and it's not like that in the Air Force. You have your own room. You have like you're kind of like just it's more of a corporate setting, kind of approach to that life. It mirrors a lot more closely to a corporate lifestyle than you would um, an actual military environment.
Yep.
So my adjustment period from the Navy, going from like, you're spending hours with the person on your left and the person on your right. You're there with each other, pulling each other through those hard times. Because there's days when I didn't even sleep in my rack. We slept in the lounge, on the floor, anywhere we could, because we were still like, in operations. There's no you sleep with you sleep when you're dead is our attitude, like suck it up, let's go. We've got a mission to do, let's go do it. So that was my attitude often. But in the Air Force, it's that attitude doesn't work.
Nope. Nope. So when you started transitioning out of the Air Force, you didn't really get much time, did you, to really get in that right mindset of, hey, I'm about to get out, or did you get a little bit of time? Like,
I had
how long did you know you were getting out?
I so out of the Navy first or
Well,
Air Force?
The Air Force.
Oh yeah. So I had a year
Oh,
that
okay.
I had my separation orders. They told me I was going to get out a little bit earlier than expected. So I had some time to prepare. Um it was just a little discombobulating because you're
Yeah.
like, okay, well now what? Now I'm getting out again, What do I do
Well,
now?
what was your biggest struggle, you'd say then? Because I know you said you kind of failed a little bit at transition. What was your biggest? I mean, I know the lifestyle change is different, but what do you say your biggest transition flop was, I guess, or roadblock?
It would definitely be not being able to transition with a plan. Um, I had a really hard time. Um, this is what I do now. I help service members transition, like as far as their career development goals are concerned, because when I took TAPS class, there was so much information overload that I didn't even know how to put a resume together. I mean, you should see my first resume. It's terrible. But through trial and error and through the years, learning from my experience and really just honing in on like, okay, what does an employer look for? How do you apply to this job? Well, how do you prepare for a job interview? That's what I do now. But I had a really, really hard time really trying to put myself on paper and learning what it takes to sell yourself to an employer so they can hire you so you can have a job, and not just any job. I didn't want to work at McDonald's. I didn't
Mm.
want to, work somewhere that's just going to pay me like back then it was like what, 7.25 an hour. I mean, I remember when I worked in AMC movie theaters, and this was back in the early 90s, I got paid 4.25 an hour. So for me to get paid more than that was a lot of money.
Yeah, I think. Well, I still think the program is broken. I can't remember what it's called now when I got out. Because I got out in 2017 after 14 and a half years. I was medically retired, and I was in E7. And
Oh wow, yeah.
you know, I always try to tell my soldiers, but I never practiced it myself because I was always worried about soldiers and the mission first, which looking back is I never took my time. But I always try to tell my soldiers, you got to make yourself marketable to the outside world. You got to do something while you're in, so when you get out, you can transition easier. Whether they listen or not, that's you can't get through to everybody. But it's like if you're not marketable to the outside world, you're going to end up like my brother-in-law or several other veterans that are under a bridge, dying from alcohol
Yep.
or drugs, or just in a mental hospital for the rest of your life or something. So I always tried to preach it, but that end program is still broken where it gives you false hope that, oh, I'm guaranteed a job. No, you're not. You're
No.
not at all. So,
Most often, because of our skill sets and our training, we are often overqualified, especially when you're going into like an entry level position, because you have to work your way up in the corporate, in the civilian sector.
mhm.
And, oftentimes a lot of the skill sets and the things that we earn, like, we were built to be super soldiers. The military's great at building you up, but they're terrible. Excuse me, the military's great at tearing you down, but they're very terrible at building you back up. They build you back into something that they want you to be. So when you get out, you're like, now what? And it's so much easier said than done to, in order to prepare yourself to get out successfully. And that's the missing link is like, okay, well then how? Oh, all this information is great, but what do I do with it?
They don't teach you how to promote yourself to the outside world, and they don't even really teach you how to build a resume, honestly, still.
Well,
But
no. And you're right, because I just did a resume for a Navy veteran of mine who was referred to me by somebody. It's like everybody's like, hey, can you, I know somebody, can you help this person? And he was like, I don't even know how to make a resume. So I
mm,
got together with him, zoomed in with him, got a chance to, get a feel about who he is and what's his background. Ended up writing a resume for him, and he was getting interviews, like, because of him. He's working now. Like, he didn't even have to worry about being out for too long and wondering how he was gonna, like, because you can only, you know if you're smart and you save your money and not party it away like I did. If you're smart about getting out, you would have some savings and a plan, and a lot of things that you're thinking about, um, to help you prepare to transition successfully. But when I got out, I was like, I don't know what to do, and I don't even know what I want. And it took me a while, but I actually ended up getting a contracting job back at the base that I was stationed at, and then I started from there. And then I bopped around a lot, but I'm finally at a place now with me being in the federal employment system as a federal employee. I've got like 20 years now in the system, and you get to buy back your time. If you go federal, you buy back your military time. So like now I like to help veterans understand that there's so much opportunity to continue your service in the federal sector. So you're still continuing your service to your country, but you're doing it in a different way. And that's what I like to focus on. I do resumes, and I help veterans, apply for jobs like that they're interested in elsewhere. Because there's so many opportunities out there now. But my specialty is federal employment.
okay. So you'll help a veteran even after they're out, right? And not just while they're in, okay.
Oh yeah.
And how long after you got out did you really start finding success?
Oh, I landed a contract with the on base about 5 or 6 months later.
Hmm,
I just happened to see, like, in Aerotech News, I saw like this advertisement for a flight operation scheduler, and that's kind of just what spun me into what I'm doing now, and understanding, like, how to work with the government.
okay. That's good. I actually, I mean, I've known a few, but after I got out, it was while we were drawing down the military. It was right before Trump came in, and it was at towards the end of Obama's reign.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna stop right there. But but yeah.
I, you
But
know,
no, I,
I just have to interject there. As a federal employee, I need to respect our CEO. I am very conservative. I do like to support the conservative movements.
No, and I know that's one thing that a lot of people forget, that when you're in the military, you don't have your freedoms. You really don't. So you don't have the freedom of speech, right to bear arms, right to gather peacefully, and all that stuff. So, and a lot of people forget that too. But no, I mean it's no big deal. It happens, on and off. But it was very hard for me to get a job at federal level, which I kind of wanted, but I haven't been doing what I do too long now. But so when so you provide services while they're in and out. How soon should a soldier or anybody, any military member, come see you about getting a resume built and start marketing themselves?
Oh, as soon as they know, like if they know they're getting out, if they have that time, because when you have your checklist, right? You're like checking things off as you go. As soon as you know that you're getting out and you have an ETS, like now is the time to prepare. You can even plan a year out. It really like depends on like how motivated are you to, like not miss a beat or miss a step in your transition to the next chapter of your life. Because you can get out and just kind of take some time out, a couple months off, 5, 6 months off. It's really up to you. Really.
Now with when I got out, I had 3 kids, one on the way.
Oh,
So and they're all itty bitty at that point. So no.
so really, it just depends on like the needs of the person. Do you need it now or can you wait? Like you
Well,
you needed it right now.
well, I have 6 kids now. Well, I mean, she was pregnant with the fourth, but
Oh,
and 2
wow.
more after that. So it's like, oh, so
Oh,
I love my babies though.
that's a big family farm you have. That's great.
I know, and they're definitely. I love my kids so much, and they've been the push behind everything I do nowadays. And but yeah, I didn't have that luxury because I only had about 6, 7 months, I think it was. I can't remember, of like preparing to get out because I got
Yeah.
told by my therapist we're gonna medically discharge, are gonna put you in for a medical discharge or retirement. I mean, and it's like,
Yeah,
uh, okay, I thought it would take longer. It didn't, and before I knew it, I was out. And that whole program I went through in the Army, and I'm sure it's probably the same for all the branches. It gave me a false sense of hope, even being an E7.
yeah,
But I would hope that they would promote more people like, yourself. And there's another person I'm actually probably going to put you in touch with for that does pure military hiring. And so maybe we can start helping more veterans get out and actually be successful instead of sitting around.
absolutely. Yeah. You said something that I really wanted to hone in on.
Mhm.
You're medically discharged, and so you were given this time frame, and you're just like, okay, like now your life just stopped. You had this whole like, okay, I'm gonna do this first. I've got a few more years left. I'm gonna keep going. Because for the majority of the time, you have people that really do want to make it a career. My dad made it a career. I couldn't see that, so I just served my time and got out. But you were already halfway through, and then unfortunately, when you're broken, the military, they're just like, you're just a liability for us now. We don't care about you. Okay, we're gonna kick you out. But that's literally what they do.
Hmm.
You're not the only veteran that I've known who has been medically discharged, and you're just like, now what? Now I'm broken and battered, and you know, I'm no use. But yes, you are. I want to really like point that out. Just because you were medically discharged or just because you have a medical condition doesn't mean that you're useless. There's ways to work around that, and there's ways to be useful, and you could still work because I'm 80%, I'm not 100. But even if I was 100, I'd still be working because I'm a workaholic and I love working. It gives me purpose. But the Navy made me workaholic, and that drive to perform, to do, is I get such happiness and satisfaction in serving and in doing. And, for some people like me who love to work, who need something to do, then, I don't let my medical conditions define me. And it's been one hell of a struggle, of course, but that's like with what you're doing now. I heard you say that there was at one time you wanted to be in federal employment, but because you're doing what you're doing now and you love it, it's
Mhm.
great to hear, because most people kind of stay where they are and they're just like, I'm just existing for no, and they're just there breathing and not really finding any purpose in their life. And so they just live with their disabilities, and they live in this limited mindset.
Yeah, I was definitely like that for a little while, but I didn't get that chance to really dwell when I was retired out. Um, I mean, my children were the purpose, and then I started doing this stuff with my business partner, and it's like a whole new world, and it's just like getting the word out there to veterans about veteran stories, the services that we're all trying to provide, and it's nice seeing that even when we're out, there's still a lot that have succeeded,
Yes.
and we're just trying to get out there and reach more. And so many are willing to just sit on a podcast, even with myself, and be like, just explain their story, how they can help, so we can just get the word out there. Even if it only touches a few more veterans,
Yeah,
it doesn't
absolutely.
matter. Because I already told you, my brother-in-law, he passed away, and the resources were there, but I didn't know how to get him in touch with those resources at that time.
Yeah.
And now I do. And I just got off the phone with another lady, or excuse me, did an interview earlier with another lady that pushes to help veterans too. And it's like, man, if I had just known these things, but
I know. I can, really relate with you here, because that's if I knew then what I know now, I would have saved myself so much time, so much heartache, so much pain. There's so many days where I was just down and depressed, and like you're just I would sleep my days away. And
mm,
I mean, but you spend all this time like sucking it up. For me, I had this there was always something there that was like, I can't stay here. I can't. I gotta keep it was and it's been hard. But you know, if you have something that keeps you going, you don't have time to really dwell on it. Well, that's what work did for me, because I don't have a family. I don't have kids. I'm not married. So what helped keep me going was working.
okay.
But at the same time, if you don't deal if you don't deal with the root of those issues, it's going to bleed out and it's just going to get more worse and terrible. So you can, that saying, you can only be strong for so long,
Yes,
until
yeah, I know that very well.
yeah, until you break. And that was me. I hit a breaking point in 2018, and I recognized, I was like, not okay. I need to step back. And I recognized I was working hard, and being a workaholic was not healthy. And so I ended up having to step back and say, you know what, I'm going to put my self-care first. Because I started this journey in 2012 when I filed for my disability, because it's not until you recognize in yourself first that you do need help, and that you're willing to go out there and look for it and find it, when you can actually, when that's the beginning of change. Because it took a while for me. I mean, I sucked it up for 12 years. I was like, there's nothing wrong with me. That was my attitude. I was like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. I'm fine. I will be okay. I was like, I am not admin, because when you join, you don't volunteer yourself for those. You don't say what's wrong with you. You don't go to medical. Well, I don't know about the Army, but in the Navy, we didn't volunteer to go to medical, because if that was our mentality, that was the culture that we lived in. You don't go to medical. You suck it up.
Yep, that is very much. I don't know about so much. It's been almost 6 years I've been out, but yeah, when I was getting out, it was you didn't really ask for help, even for mental health. And if you did ask for help, all they did was drug you up. So,
Well, that, and then goes in your records, and then depending on the leadership that you have, if you have toxic leadership, then they can smear your career, your name, you're considered a bad seed, and they'll kick you out. Like, if you have good people around you and they're good leaders and they can take care of you, then yes, you'll be able to transition better. But in my world, there was no admitting to anything. And, here I am years later, and I'm finding out, like, a lot of my brothers and sisters in arms, they're like, man, I wish I would have known back then. I would had your back. And I'm like, well, that's great now. But back then we were all young and dumb. So who knows what would have happened if, like, would you have really been there? I mean, we're mature now, we're grown. We've lived through a lifetime already, so we are who we are now. But back then I was so naive and gullible, and so you're so easily impressionable when you're 18, 19, and 20. So, who's to say that, for in my experience anyway, a lot of the guys that I did hang around with have been great guys, because I still keep in touch with them till this day, and they're amazing, very supportive of everything that I'm doing right now, helping our community. But back then we were just young and dumb, so and
Yeah,
foolish and crazy and
I was 18 years old, fresh out of OSET training from Fort Knox, and 3 weeks after getting to my unit, I was in Iraq already in 2003. So I did 2003, 4, and then of course we did dumb shit back then. It wasn't as bad back then as it was later years. But
right.
then you give a 19-year-old, had my birthday over there, 19-year-old, a bunch of money from deployment, because back then
Yep.
you had nothing to spend it on. And all it was a party until we deployed the second time, which was
Yep.
less than a year later. And to come back with money again. And it's just, I wish, yeah, I wish they would have taught financial classes while we're in, a little bit better, instead of just have to seek it out. They should have like been like, here you go. But, but
I, I agree. I feel the same way. If I knew now what I know about money, it actually took
Mhm.
me doing I started my entrepreneurial ventures in an MLM kind of structure. So I was in financial services for a while, and
Oh, cool.
yeah, which is great because you get to learn about how to manage money. You get to learn about the finance industry, the insurance industry. It's such a huge world. And that helped me to really understand how to manage money, how money works, how wealthy people build wealth. And it all starts up here. And so, it boils down to, if you can get this right up
Hmm.
here, everything else will be easy. And, that's one thing that we can revert back to in our training and our skill sets, because a lot of the training that, young people get in college, or, it's all intellectual. But the interpersonal, the professional development, the things that we learn in the military have made us to be, a lot better, more responsible individuals. Now, financially, we were a mess, because I know I was. I mean, I blew it on alcohol and taxis, shopping, and, like, any chance that we were on liberty. Oh yeah, I took that. I was like, I'm gonna live it up, because we're gonna have to go back to the ship in a few hours. So I'm gonna make the most of it.
I don't blame you, honestly. I really don't. I've heard, but so, so how can people find your services, and what are some of your social media platforms that you're on?
I usually have, so I'm connected in our veterans community through Facebook. There's a lot of a lot of Facebook groups that and then of course a lot of veterans that, I'm connected to. So people find me through other folks, through Facebook groups. You can find me on LinkedIn. Like, if you want me to help you with your resume, you can message me through Facebook Messenger or LinkedIn
Okay.
is is where I've been using, like, my means to communicate with people, is Facebook Messenger and LinkedIn.
Okay. Do you have a website or anything yet, or?
I no, I everything's in in process. Everything like my Zoom background, this is what
Mhm.
I'm working on is you know, everything's a process. I'm working on building myself as a brand and really wanting to focus on um you know, I'm building my brand at the moment,
Okay.
but you know, people can find me on social media if they want to contact me that way.
Okay. And it's nice to hear that you're willing to build a resume. Now, is there, do you charge veterans or is there a fee for anything or for your services? I mean, you got to make money somehow. So,
I am
oh,
working on
hi,
that.
Kitty.
Kitty wants to join the conversation.
It's, I've had a few calls. I had one earlier today and one yesterday. It seems like the animals just wanted to intervene at like the last minute and get some exposure too. So,
Right. I am I'm working on pricing points and putting together a package. But for people that I help, you know, my fellow friends and veterans, I don't charge. I don't have a price point at the moment. I usually like to help just because they've asked me for help. I am working on putting together some packages and a price point for people if they want to utilize my services. So right now everything's like um a beta test.
mhm.
So I'm in a beta mode at the moment as I build. So people can kind of contact me, and if they want to contribute to the work that I've made or that I've done, I'm not going to turn that down. But I'm in beta mode at the moment. So once I get everything up and running like I should, as a professional business, then I'll be able to offer those price points and those packages.
Mm. Okay. Well, it's nice to hear. I'm glad you're out there helping veterans, and uh, it, there's so many services that are offered to veterans anymore. And if we don't get the word out there more, they're just going to keep going to the streets and just
Right.
terrible jobs, minimum wage, and we're worth so much more. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I do best as a writer. I can make you look great on paper. I can coach you on, you know, the from military terms to civilian terms, you know, understanding that and understanding that, you know, as you're selling yourself, you are wanting to be the person that they say, hey man, we like this guy. We want to hire him. You know, let's call him in for an interview. That's the kind of result that I target, that I want to get for the other person. So I was pretty elated for one of my clients, a Navy veteran. He just got out, and he was like, thanks to you, I didn't even have to like worry, or you know, I didn't have to um you know, be out for too long and wondering where to go and what to do, because I helped him out.
and that's very nice. So this is going to wrap up today's show with the Swandingo Files with Marilyn Richards, taking your military lingo, which is useless on the outside world, and turning into
Right.
something that's going to be an actual skill and make you more successful. I appreciate you being on here, Marilyn, with me today, and I do look forward to talking to you again someday. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. Have a good day.